Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 9:55 a.m. on the 4th of February 2025. It's been raining all morning and it's very, very cloudy, but there's lots of blue skies up there and it's trying to break through and the sun's shining through the clouds just illuminating some of the clouds in this fluffy white kind of haze, and the rest is still grey and murky, like they can't quite make up their mind if they want to rain or just float away. Sometimes it's like that. There's an interesting cloud formation in the south, and it's looks like faces actually. Quite interesting. Anyway, oh yeah, look, I should take a photo because you're not going to believe me unless you see it. Oh, it's already shifted. You have to be quick with clouds. There's like a man with a big white beard and another man with kind of a patch on his eye. But anyway, they've already changed form. You can actually read fortunes by cloud watching. It's something that my de facto stepfather, who was a skeptic and an unbeliever, did like to do. He didn't do fortunes with it, but he used to like to cloud watch and point out the different shapes that he could see in the clouds. So for someone who didn't believe in magic and the occult and the paranormal, and he had tiny little things that showed me that he did have a magical side to him. But at the end of the day, I didn't really fucking care, since he was also a predator and pain in my ass. And I spent most of my childhood trying to avoid him actually as best as I could, along with the rest of my family of origin. Down the beach every day, staying far the fuck away from the familial predators. So, yes, enmeshment, people. It's a suffocating, horrible thing, especially when it's fake. There's no worse thing than fake love and fake people and liars and gaslighters and narcissists and psychopaths. Ask me how I know. Anyway, today is another day where I'm alive in the psychedelic dreaming, and I'm older and I'm wiser and a lot more, I can't say calmer because I have, with the grief over Charlie, I'm having mood swings and I'm a bit labile and I'm a bit up and down, like the proverbial horse draws, but not literally, you understand. And I'm just riding it through, and people who wish to be real with me will make their intentions abundantly clear by actions, words, deeds and energy. The rest of the little game players will eventually get bored and drift away when I stop feeding them with my ever flowing, ever abundant resources of spiritual energy, and it'll just be a slow process of eliminating the tricksters, I think. It built to a peak experience of emotional, joyous, wondrous love and passion and psychedelic dreams, and took 17 months to start to recede back down, and probably takes 17 months to heal from it too. That's the pattern with things that turn out to be invalid. But as I wrote on my Instagram, it's not my first rodeo, and it's a shame that I have to live like this and be used to it. It's a sickness, and it's actually, for once in my life, it's not my sickness. I'm not going to own that. I'm not going to own that. I have enough issues of my own without taking on those burdens, babies. So let the lie, let the love blossom and unfurl and grow where it belongs with the right people that are genuine, and Mama T will set herself free if she does, and allow her own becoming. And I'm okay with it. I'm crying because I don't know why I'm crying actually. I was okay before I started this video. It's this looking into this laptop, it's like a black mirror, black screen. It kind of draws all the truth and pain, and it's probably fucking better than therapy. But don't tell my psychiatrist like that. You think he's failed. He hasn't failed. He's done a tremendous job with me. He's built me back from, almost too many almost deaths. So he hasn't failed at all. Anyway, I'll be seeing him tomorrow, and that'll blow his head back. I think I blew his head back last session too. But he's a wonderful man. And, I have good people that support and soul nourish me, for whom I'm grateful. And I'm off to the doctor this afternoon, get a cyst cut out of my back. It's another kind of energetic attack in the middle of my back. Already got a massive big hole from the last one that should have been done in hospital actually. What year was that one? 2023, I think it was. That was bad. So this one I'm going to get seen to early before it grows into something so enormous that even the specialist skin cancer doctor actually kind of freaked out. And I have to inhabit this body, and it's not working for me, people of Earth. My tendency is to want to leave, but that's a cowardly act, and it also strips me of the opportunity to find real enduring loves that are meant for me and are heartfelt and authentic and decent and honouring of me. And could happen one day. Doubtful. Even after 30 years of therapy, it's still doubtful, but it could happen. I've been shown so much love from my friends who wish more for me. They really wish more for me. I can see that. They do. They want more for me. They want more for me than struggling alone in housing commission and poverty in a house that literally has killed everything I loved over time, not immediately, but on average almost yearly. It's toxic land. Toxic. It's probably killing me. Toxic. What am I going to do about it? Nowhere else to go. If I ask for a transfer, I'll be put in a 1-bedroom place, which will be like living in a prison, and staring at 4 walls every day will hasten my death too. Even my psychiatrist is dead against that outcome. So I have no choice but to stay here and wallow in my own fecal matter and struggle. But some things come down to destiny, people of Earth, and I was brought here, as I said in another video, I was brought here 21 and a half years in the most kind of astonishing spiritual way. So some things are just fate, and I just have to step up to the plate, bat a new ball game, start again, somehow, somewhere, with someone loving next time who's genuinely wants me and wants the best for me and is, well, at the very least, kind. And did I mention honouring? Honour is the key. Honour and integrity and authenticity and grace. I've been under full-blown attack in recent weeks. I'm well aware of that, well aware. And the ones who love me rallied to be around me. And maybe I fantasised that too. Maybe it's all part of a game, but the only way to win a game, babies, is not to play. And Tanya is no fool, should not be underestimated. I have loved you all very deeply and honouringly and sweetly and protectively at times. But I'm okay to, carry on with my life alone and hold my head up high. And there's great changes afoot. In the Brisbane music scene. My friends told me that the Brooklyn Standard is cancelling, cutting back on their contract, so they want them playing there less often. And astonishing and upsetting. I'm upset about it, but it's nothing I can do about it. I just told them I'll support them wherever they go to play, because I'm their fan and I'm a true and loyal friend. So they were happy to hear that. The music and the dance can and must and will go on. Like the fucking Titanic, playing till the last player slips under the waves, people of Earth. Although let us pray and fight that it doesn't come to that. I don't want my beautiful friends to go down with the sinking ship. I want them to rise up in their own innate power and success that they've worked so hard for all their lives. Well, since 2009, I think alter egos were formed, I'm not sure. But anyway, many, many years. I want them thriving, not just surviving, but thriving. And I want them happy and healthy and successful, surrounded by people who genuinely love them. And the same for my beautiful Ramjet. Happy, healthy, successful. And why the Brooklyn Standard is cutting back on their gigs, I don't know. It's probably a financial matter. Times are tough, and it'll be an economic measure. Hiring probably younger people and younger bands don't charge as much money, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know that side of the music industry, how much they all get paid and how much is divided up between new upcoming talent who aren't as experienced. I'm presuming they get paid less, but that's an assumption on my part. I don't know. But I'm kind of grieving the fact that I am. It's a grief for me too that their gigs are being cut back. I think my friend said from Anzac Day onwards, because I've enjoyed being there every Friday night supporting alternate weeks, both Alter Egos and Ramjet. I have really enjoyed that for the past 17 months. And as I said to my friend, it's my birthday in April. I was looking forward to spending my 60th with you all and having my characteristic wild dance. But times are changing. Maybe it's time I hung up my boots and gave up on the dance too and just got old gracefully. There is that. It's no accidents in the universe. The kaleidoscope is shifting all around me, and I don't have to like it, but I'll just have to weather it through. Another storm building. Well, I've shucked off storms before, babies. I did it on Sunday afternoon at Jacob's Well. Funny old girl that I am. Anyway, let us continue with reading from Great Australian Ghost Stories. We're up to chapter 9. The Spectral Bridegroom. I know that ghosts have wandered on earth, so be with me always. Take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. True loves find you everywhere. Even my former lover, enemy, David Davidson, found me. He'd never been to this home when he was alive. We ended our friendship 16 years prior to his death. It was an ugly end to a friendship. Very fucking ugly. And I grieved a long time. Far longer than that man was worth, because he really was a veritable monster. But the love I had unwittingly or naively or foolishly poured into him as a young woman in my, 30s. I met him when I was 33. Anyway, it doesn't matter now in the broad scheme of things. But I want you to remember the love you pour into people, that energy, even when it turns ugly and rancid and they try to strangle you and they turn all your friends against you and their girlfriend sits there and mocks and derides you and they were just filthy and rancid and evil. That love never died. Had to haunt me. He still haunts me occasionally. I don't know why. I don't know what he gets out of it. Certainly nothing but a brief moment of my attention telling him to basically fuck off, or sometimes I humour him and have a bit of a laugh because it's insanely funny. It's insanely funny how the love I poured into that man was lasted beyond his death. Well beyond his death. He's been dead. It'll be 9 years in May. So I have no regrets about the love I've poured into evil, cold, cruel, sadistic, superficial, empty vessels, because I'm a catalyst, and it's what I do. It's part of my spirit, my shamanic walk. I come and I stir and fizz and froth everything up, and when it settles back down, I move on, because I was never really wanted, and that's what catalysts are. They're just a force of nature, a bit of fucking chemistry, and a fizz and a hiss and a piss and a, you know, you have to laugh. It's kind of comical when you think about it. It would be comical if it wasn't so fucking painful, but c'est la vie, babies. Life goes on, and I was promised that I would have a real love in my 60s, so I turned 60 in April. Never know who I might meet one day. Someone real and true for me. And my real friends will stick with me, and they'll rejoice with me when I find my real love one day. And the rest will just organically slough themselves off, because when they've got no one to feed on and crave attention by and play sick little emotional games, they get bored and eventually they detach like leeches, fully glutted leeches, engorged. You kind of have to laugh. But even making this video and saying what I'm saying now is, in a way, feeding them. So when I stop feeding them, that will be interesting to see who realises what was real and what was not. Anyway, the spectral bridegroom. That quote was from Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, English novelist, 1818 to 1848, dead by 30. Managed to write all those wonderful books. Makes me look like a loser and a bum. I've achieved nothing in 60 years. It's another thing I'm having to confront regularly, is my perpetual Hayaka type failures. So there is that. This disturbing story has found a permanent place in the folklore of the flat, dusty Wimmera region of northwestern Victoria, where the events took place on a hot Saturday afternoon in the not too distant past. The story begins at an old weather-beaten wooden church on the outskirts of a small town, where most of the district's residents had gathered to witness a marriage. I'm thinking about the marriage thing because my beautiful Margaret, that I saw yesterday, was wearing her mother's wedding band, and as we walked past a shop with lovely bridal gowns, she said, "I would like to get married again." She's a year younger than me, so 58, and I nodded. As mature aged women, we're craving stability and a solid love and commitment. I get it. Anyway, I didn't say anything to her, I just nodded. She's been with her partner for quite some years, and he's a truly good man, decent, lovely man, but he's never been married, so he doesn't ever want to be married as far as that contractual certificate legalised form goes, and I get that too. I'm very, very wary of ever signing my soul away to a human man ever again. But I had been married and it wasn't pleasant, so I've got those reasons. But anyway, hopefully my beautiful friend Margaret and Nathan choose each other that way if that's what she really wants, and maybe it will happen for her one day. I just want everyone to be happy and be together with the ones they love, however that manifests, with harm to none, competition with none. Both bride and groom were well-known locals. She, the daughter of a local businessman, he, a wheat farmer with a modest spread about 20 kilometres out of town. The stark little church had been brightened up with bunches of wildflowers and sheaths of pungent eucalyptus leaves. The minister was robed up. The elderly organist was seated at her harmonium, ready to strike up the bridal march, and the congregation sat on hard wooden pews, excitedly chattering, swapping compliments on one another's outfits, and awaiting the arrival of the wedding party. Sounds happy and joyous and kind of sweet. Showing the practical spirit that characterises people who live in such remote and harsh regions. The bride drove herself to the church in her own little Morris car, with her dad sitting beside her and her mum and her sister, the only bridesmaid, in the back. They arrived punctually at the wicket gate of the church, to be greeted by a worried-looking best man, and no sign of the groom. "Sorry, love, he isn't here yet," the best man explained. "He was going to meet me here half an hour ago, but he hasn't showed up yet. Reckon he's had a spot of car trouble, eh? I'm sure he'll be along in a minute." Pardon me. That minute passed, and so did about 30 more, and there was still no sign of the missing bridegroom. The congregation got restless, the bride got worried, her father got angry, and her mother, fearing scandal, shook her head and sniffled into her handkerchief. Finally, half an hour after the service was to have begun, the bridegroom appeared, not driving his car as expected, but on foot and running up the street towards the church. As he drew closer, the waiting group saw that his suit was torn and covered in red dirt, and a makeshift bandage wound around his head was clotted with dried blood. "What happened to you?" the bride asked, relieved that her intended had turned up, but concerned about the state he was in. "I had a bit of an accident on the road, love. This bloody big roo bounded across in front of me. I couldn't miss it and I lost control of the car. It's smashed up, but I'm okay. I had to wait till someone came along so I could hitch a ride," the groom explained. Anyhow, I'm here now, so let's get on with the wedding, eh? He said, giving his future wife a squeeze and adding in a whisper, "Cool, you look bonza, love." Never mind. The minister was concerned about the injury to the young man's head and suggested the local doctor should take a look at it before the ceremony. "I'm all right, Reverend," the bridegroom insisted. "I've held everybody up too long now. I'll get the doc to have a look at me later. Let's get on with it, eh?" And so the ceremony took place. It's a sort of stupid thing I would do. Just keep going no matter what, Half your limbs are hanging off. Oh, just keep going. I'm gonna achieve this. Well, anyway, sometimes you gotta know when to walk away with your head held high. know when to fold them. How does that song go? Know when to walk away. Know when to run. There's no money involved in any of these relationships, but no harm, no foul. Only peace and contentment, knowing I'm the Tanya and I was who I was at all times, and there's nothing I can do about any of that. And so the ceremony took place. The bride and groom exchanged their vows. The groom placed a gold ring on the bride's finger. The men in the church mused over what a lucky bastard the groom was and how soon they could get at the beer. The women had a jolly good cry, and the minister finally pronounced the couple man and wife. A spread of ham sandwiches, fruitcake, hot tea and cold beer had been arranged at the local pub, and most of the thirsty guests trekked off to get stuck into that. But as the newlyweds were leaving the church, the groom asked his new wife if she would drive him out to pick up his damaged car before they went to the wedding breakfast. "I'm a bit worried. Someone might pinch me tools out the back," he said. "I'd be able to enjoy myself better if I knew the car was safe." "Men," muttered the bride. But at that moment, if her new husband had asked her to walk over hot coals, she would have agreed, just to please him. Excuses and promises to return within the hour were made, and the bride's father promised to save his new son some beer. The best man, the bridesmaid, and 3 of the groom's closest mates were recruited to go with the couple in case help was needed to tow the car into town. Reluctantly, the bride hitched up her wedding dress and climbed into the driver's seat of her own little car. While she removed her veil and tossed it into the rear seat, the groom slid in beside her, wincing with pain as he ducked his head down and again when he settled on the passenger seat. I had a little cherry metallic red. Well, it was painted like a bone ivory colour when we bought it, but my then husband, were we married when he bought me that car, or were we only engaged? I think we were engaged when he bought me that car. Anyway, he had it spray painted metallic cherry red for me because I hated the boring bone coloured car. And it was a 1966 Morris Minor. It was like a year younger than me. And I loved that car. I went all around Wellington in it. almost famous for driving around in that little thing. Although it was so small that like one time I was driving down, one of the freeways, and Wellington's a very windy city, and there was this massive big gust of wind blew through, and me and my little car were airborne for about 5 seconds. I was like, oh my God, hit the road again, keep going. That was freaky. That was a freaky experience. Anyway, what do they say? Never drive faster than your angels can fly. Well, never drive faster than gale force winds, babies. But anyway, it was pretty intense. It's funny how these memories just pop into my head from time to time. Are you sure you're all right? The bride asked. I'm fine, love. You know me. Me head's like a block of wood. We'll pick up the car and go to the pub for a while, and then... The groom put his hand on his bride's knee, but she pushed it away. One thing at a time, eh? She remonstrated. As soon as we get back here, the doctor needs to take a look at that bang on your head. I don't want you passing out on me tonight, do I? The couple laughed as the bride drove off. The rest of the group followed in 2 cars, and years later, one of the men testified to the mystifying and terrifying events that followed. What I'm going to tell you will be hard to believe, I know, he explained, but as God is my witness, it's the truth. And it was not just me, but all of us who went off after the wedding that day that saw what happened. All the roads were unsealed then, and the dust was fierce. I was riding in the second car with the best man, and the bride's sister was in the back. There was another car following us with the other 2 blokes in it. We couldn't see the bride's little Morris. She was a few minutes ahead of us, but we knew where she was heading, and we could see the cloud of dust she was making. We drove on for miles, and then, all of a sudden, the weird stuff started to happen. Now I can tell you, because I've lived in the Wimmera all my life, bends are as rare as hen's teeth on the roads out there. You can drive 100 miles in some places without turning the steering wheel. But anyhow, we came to what must have been the only bend in the road, a right-angle turn where the boundaries of 2 properties met. The country all around was covered in thick, stunted scrub, and we couldn't see what was around the bend as we came up to it. The best man was just saying to me that maybe this was where the accident had happened, when he stopped in mid-sentence and shouted out, "Bloody hell!" As we came around the bend, we saw the little Morris stalled in the middle of the road. The best man jammed his foot on the brakes, and we just managed to stop in time, just a yard from the other car. But that was not what gave us the biggest shock. The bride was out of her car, standing beside it, screaming her head off. A more incongruous sight could hardly be imagined than a bride dressed in her long white wedding gown, standing quite alone in the middle of a dusty road in a dusty landscape, miles from anywhere, especially one who had been deliriously happy just half an hour before, and who was now wringing her hands in a frenzy and screaming with horror and dismay. Our witness continued his account. We all piled out and ran to her. Her sister grabbed the bride's arms and held her. "What is it? Tell me," she begged. But by then, Me and the best man knew what was wrong. Both of us had glanced into the little car, and it was empty. "He's gone," wailed the bride. "He was sitting next to me 1 minute and we were talking. We were going along fine. He said we were nearly there. Then suddenly he just vanished." "He's gone," she repeated, then collapsed, sobbing hysterically into her sister's arms. Made her a wife though, didn't he? He was fucking determined to make her a honourable, respectable woman. Is it good or is it bad? I'll have to think about that. "He can't be gone," the best man whispered to me. "He is," I said. "He must have wandered off," said the best man, loud enough for the bride to hear. "He didn't wander off. How could he?" she screamed. "We were going 20 miles an hour." At that moment, the third car that had been following pulled up and the best man explained what had happened. He and the two from the third car insisted on making a search of the scrub on both sides of the road. I didn't bother. I believed the bride. You don't make up stories like that. The three returned after about 10 minutes, and the best man whispered to me, "He's gone all right. There's no one out there." I didn't bother to answer, and a terrible explanation for what had happened began to dawn on me. "We need to go to the crash site," he said to the other men. I suggested the bridesmaid bundle her sister into our car and wait for us. While the rest of us drove on to find where the groom had crashed his car. The man who had insisted on the useless search tried to reassure the bride by saying that her new husband had probably wandered up to crash site ahead of them and that we would bring him back. The bride simply stared at him, her eyes like tear-stained saucers. It broke me up, I can tell you. I turned away. We got into the third car and drove carefully around the other two. "It's bloody weird," said the best man. "He couldn't just disappear out of a moving car, could he? Bear in mind, they've all witnessed him get married. It's probably one of the most bizarre hauntings I've ever heard of, to be honest. I'm struggling with it myself." I kept silent while the others tossed the idea about. I believed we knew the explanation, and it scared the hell out of me. Half a mile further up the road, the best man who was sitting next to me shouted, "There, up ahead, there's his car. Oh, Jesus." I parked a few yards from the groom's car. Lying on the opposite side of the road was the kangaroo he had hit, a large male, unmarked but dead, with a trickle of blood oozing out of its nose. We ran up to the wreck. The sand all around was soaked with petrol and oil. The car was overturned and lying with its wheels sticking up in the air. The roof of the car was crushed and almost flattened. I dropped to my knees at the passenger side window, knowing full well what I would see through the jagged, broken glass. I prayed I would be wrong, but I wasn't. The bridegroom was still in his car, where he had been trapped since the crash, his lifeless body wedged between the dashboard and roof. His head had gone through the windscreen, and a swarm of flies buzzed around a terrible, bloody injury on his forehead. The witness's account ends at that point, and I'm tempted to end the retelling of the story on the same dramatic note. But I can hear a chorus of complaint from readers wanting to know how these strange events played out and what happened to the unfortunate bride. Well, the local constable filed an accident report, which tactfully avoided mentioning the time of death, and a coroner's inquest concluded that the bridegroom had met his death by misadventure. The local newspaper, showing more consideration than the press generally do today, reported the tragic death of a local man on his wedding day very briefly, and left the details to the imagination of its readers. Most of those readers had been present at the wedding, and they knew what they had seen, as did those of the party who had gone out to the wreck. The bridegroom's signature was written boldly in the church registry, and the ring he had given his now widow rested on her finger for all to see. She attended her husband's funeral in the same church they had married in a week earlier, then moved away from the district. As far as I know, she never received another visit from her spectral bridegroom. That was wise, moving away, because imagine that, living with that, with everybody knowing you married a ghost or a zombie. Freaky, man. I've always dreamed of living in Byron Bay, but I can't afford to live there because it's only for the wealthy now. But I'm very tempted to just leave this sacred space I've lived in for 21 and a half years and almost 22 years, and go somewhere and start life again, alone as per usual, but you know, it's risky. Whatever I do has risks. If I stay here, I could die from whatever evil or toxicity is on this land that's killed all my pets. And if I go away, as I know I should. Oh well, that's old programming from my mother and her sappy love songs that I was forced to endure through childhood. I'll make you a night like no night has been, or will be again. Yada, 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 yada. It's all bollocks, isn't it? It's all bollocks. None of it's real. I was brought up in fantasy world with predators, and I've lived with predators all my life, and all I have left is a psychedelic dreaming. But yes, it might actually not be such a silly idea. Maybe move to a smaller country town. It would have to be within Queensland to get a transfer with housing, and like I said, they'd probably put me in a 1-bedroom, so round we go, spinning in a dime, going nowhere fast, which to be honest is grinding my gears, which is a euphemism for something else that leads me into, but never mind. I'm going to be okay, people of Earth, no matter what happens. I'm always okay. Have my spirits and my angels and my fae with me, and as much as they lead me a merry dance sometimes, they also do have my back, unlike most human mortals. Chapter 10. My beautiful Lynn reminded me yesterday how many times I was brought back to this planet alive, kicking and screaming, even against, on a few occasions, my own will. So that's my level of okay, I guess. Living out this life, even though it's absurdist and often cruel. Chapter 10. The Wisdom of Solomon. The existence of a liar is more probable than the existence of a ghost. George Bernard Shaw, Irish playwright, 1856 to 1950. He lived a good long life, 94. Well, you probably meet more liars than you do meet ghosts in your day, but in my life it's kind of balanced out 50-50. Every period in Australian history has had its Alan Bonds and Christopher Skases. Opportunists in the right place at the right time, prepared to risk their shirts on long odds and exploit weaknesses in the system. In the 1820s and 30s such a man was Solomon Weissman, known far and wide as the King of the Hawkesbury, and who, witnesses swear, still haunts his former home in the company of a collection of colourful and terrifying spooks. Trying to work something out, because no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But I was brought to this house. This house was my destiny in nearly 22 years. Far the fuck out, people of Earth. It's the longest time I've stayed in one place too. Even in childhood, I had to move a lot. The second longest time was I lived in my marital home for 7 years with that entity. And but anyway, that was the longest. At that time, that was the longest time I'd ever lived in one place. But here we are, babies. 22 years at sacred space. I only declared it sacred space in 2018, trying to protect this land and home from evil and other intrusions. I'm looking at it can't be right. There's some fruit on the tree in my neighbour's yard. They look like apples, but they can't be apples. To go over and see what they are. Maybe they're pomegranates. Anyway, where was I? As a young man, Solomon Weissman worked as a lighterman on the River Thames in London, carrying cargo from ship to shore. A little less usually reached the shore than left the ship, and the profit went into Solomon's pocket. He was caught red-handed one night, transferring some valuable Brazilian redwood from his lighter to an accomplice's boat. The next morning he was arraigned before a magistrate at the Old Bailey, who promptly sentenced him to death. This was later commuted to transportation to the penal colony of New South Wales for life. It's a long way from home for a not so good Jewish boy to end up in Australia, me hearty. By the gods. But do the crime, do the time, am I right? Solomon's young wife and infant son accompanied him on the convict transport Alexander. And Mrs. Wiseman, gave birth to a second son as the ship was passing Cape Town. Well, they were lucky they stayed together. My great-great-grandfather left a wife and 3 kids behind in England and then married again in New Zealand. Technically was a bigamist, but never saw his original family again. But he was a convict in New South Wales for a while, and then he caught a ship and he got his freedom to New Zealand, and the rest is history, people of Earth. The rest is his story. On arrival in Sydney in August 1806, Jane Wiseman, being a free woman, applied to have her husband assigned to her as a convict servant, and the authorities agreed. Less than a year after being sentenced, Solomon was effectively a free man and able to devote himself to making his fortune. On his wife's recommendation, he soon had a ticket of leave, and a year after that, a full pardon. Did all right there. Solomon used the profits from his Thames exploits as a deposit on 2 trading vessels that plied the coast from Newcastle to the Shoalhaven River, and was granted land in several places around the fringes of the colony. 1 parcel of 80 hectares was on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, opposite the mouth of the MacDonald River. Solomon established a tavern there in 1821, which he called the Packet. Strange name for a pub, isn't it? The Packet. Probably manifesting wanting to make a packet. But so remote was the spot, trust me to think that, but so remote was the spot and so few the customers that he allowed the licence to lapse. That same year, Jane Wiseman became ill, died, and was interred in a vault on the Hawkesbury property. Solomon was left with 4 sons and 2 daughters to care for, although by then he was on the way to becoming a very rich man. In 1826, Providence smiled twice on Solomon Wiseman. A comely widow agreed to become his second wife and stepmother to his brood, and Governor Darling announced that a road connecting Newcastle with Sydney was to be built, running right past Solomon's Hawkesbury property. Solomon wasted no time. He tendered for and won a contract to supply fresh meat to the convict road gangs, built a new tavern, and obtained a licence to operate a ferry across the Hawkesbury, which became an integral part of the new Great Northern Road. Profits poured into Solomon's coffers, and within months he was able to set about building himself a fine two-storey stone residence, Cobham Hall, on a hillside overlooking the tavern and the ferry. In less than 20 years, Solomon Wiseman had progressed from being a felon to a man spoken of in government circles as our wealthy and respected contractor, and from a convict to King of the Hawkesbury, complete with his own castle. It's amazing, isn't it? In 1832, the government decided they could no longer allow a private individual to control the ferry and purchased it for a generous sum from Solomon, retaining the name Wise Man's Ferry, which it bears to this day. In that year, Solomon also divested himself of the running of the tavern to one of his sons-in-law, and spent the 6 years of life that remained to him living like a country squire, holding grand social entertainments at Cobham Hall, including one attended by Governor Burke. In October 1838, Solomon Wiseman died. His body was laid to rest temporarily beside his first wife's in the grounds of Cobham Hall. His obituary described him as a respected old colonist, which was a common euphemism for an ex-convict, and rather wishfully as a friend to the poor. I like that, wishfully. Shortly before his death, Solomon had promised the community in the small village that had grown up around his ferry and taken its name that he would donate a piece of his land and £300 to build them a church, which was also to house his and his family's remains. Construction had just begun when Solomon died. Scrutiny of his estate revealed that he had never owned the land he so freely gave away, and his executors refused to hand over the £300. A scandal ensued, and although the church was eventually completed, the disenchanted community shunned it. So he clearly wasn't Jewish if he built a church. So I made an assumption there based on his very Jewish sounding name. Oops. Oh well, you get that. Notwithstanding, Solomon and Jane Wiseman's remains were duly installed in a vault in the church, but Solomon was not allowed to rest there very long either. There were rumours that he had been entombed in a swallowtail coat and expensive boots, with a court sword at his side, a diamond ring on his finger, gold stick pin in his cravat, and his gold watch and chain strung across his ample belly. You can't take it with you, people of Earth. Someone would have very quickly divested him of all of that. It would be just like old Sol to try to take his riches with him, the locals said. When the disused church fell into disrepair, thieves broke in and raided Solomon's tomb. They didn't find any of the aforementioned booty, just the old man's teeth and bones, which they scattered. According to one story, youths in the village used his skull as a football, kicking it around in the dust. Very dishonouring. Eventually, The local postmaster paid to have what remained of Solomon gathered and buried in the local cemetery. Jane's body was also removed to the cemetery, and the couple were laid to rest for the third and final time. Perhaps no man's mortal remains deserved the fate that befell Solomon Wiseman's, but there is plenty of evidence, apart from the debacle over the church, to suggest that he gave the villagers at Wiseman's Ferry little reason to respect him. He was not the benevolent country squire he liked people to think he was, nor the charitable sage his obituary described. Solomon started and ended his life as a rogue. Only his bank balance improved. Such men are the stuff legends are made of, and in no time at all, wild stories about the king of the Hawkesbury's character and his lifestyle became part of local folklore. So too did a whole collection of ghost stories centred on Cobham Hall, which became, in the 1880s, the Wiseman's Ferry Hotel. The most oft-reported ghost was, and still is, that of a female, whose appearances are sometimes heralded by the rustle of fabric, footsteps, or gentle coughing. Guests staying in the hotel in the 1890s and early 1900s reported visits to their rooms in the middle of the night by a pale figure dressed in a long, gossamer-like nightgown. It would float across the floor, sometimes pausing to look at them lying, quaking with fear, in their beds. The ghost seemed, to some observers, to be crying. The same pathetic figure was also seen leaving the kitchen and climbing the main staircase, floating about in the garden and on the road between the hotel and the ferry. I have an urge to cry myself again. What the fuck is wrong with me today? Honestly, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It must be a delayed reaction to losing Charlie. I can't quantify it other than that. One lady in her 80s described to the press in 1974 how, as a small girl, out walking with her mother one evening, she encountered the ghost just up from the ferry and surrounded by grey mist. I'm probably upset because they're going to have to cut into my back to remove that bloody cyst or whatever that is, and I hate being cut into, people of Earth. I hate it. I have another massive scar on my back, and I hate this existence, being at the mercy of my body. I hate it. What am I going to do about it? Anyway, I must calm down. I've survived everything that's been thrown at me all my life. Almost 60 years. I can survive anything. Almost anything anyway. Dear Goddess. Here we go. Maybe I'm a ghost too. Maybe you'll imagine me on YouTube. You will imagine me dancing for your bands and making a goddamn fool of myself every week. Maybe it's all just some horrible, horrible nightmare that I'll wake up from and just hold on to the wisps of the few lovely things that and people that I was blessed with in this life. Yes. Hold on to the will o' the wisp. Can you hold on to a will-o'-the-wisp? If you have enough will, you can get all wispy and just hold on while let go, babies. She was quite beautiful, if a dead person can be said to be beautiful, with a long, slender neck and graceful arms. The features of her face were indistinct, as if they had been worn away or faded, but her expression was very sad. In fact, a sort of overpowering sadness seemed to ooze out of her whole body, which we could feel and which made me want to cry. I was scared, of course, wondering why she had shown herself to us and worried what she might do to us, but I was also fascinated by her. My mother grabbed me and folded me in her arms to protect me. I could feel Mother's body trembling through her skirts. The ghost just stood in front of us, blocking our way, for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Then she sighed, a deep, mournful sigh, pardon me, that sounded like a rush of wind. Then she faded until only her outline was visible. Then that disappeared into the strange mist, and the mist itself just evaporated, leaving bright moonlight. 5 minutes after she appeared, she was gone. Mother grabbed my hand and we ran back up the hill as fast as our legs could carry us. Most people believe that this footloose phantom is the ghost of Jane Wiseman. Skeptics argue quite rightly that Jane died a full 5 years before construction began at Cobham Hall, but forget that she was originally buried close by, and that some reports of the ghost refer to it rising from Jane's original tomb and hurrying towards the house. I wonder what she's hurrying towards the house for, what she's looking for, what's causing her distress to make her manifest like that. Where legend and history do clash is concerning Jane's death. Legend would have us believe she was thrown from the balcony at Cobham Hall by Solomon and died when her head struck the semicircular steps below. History, of course, proves that impossible. Springing from the story was a claim, still repeated, that bloodstains appear on those steps from time to time. If they do, the blood was never Jane Wiseman's. Another contender in the identity stakes is Rosanna White, a housemaid whom Solomon found one day in bed with another servant, Richard Maddox. Stories tell of Solomon ordering Rosanna's hair shaved off and Maddox heavily flogged. Rosanna was reported as cursing her employer and swearing that she would one day come back to haunt his house. Perhaps it is she, not Jane Wiseman, who haunts the building and its surroundings. The shade of Solomon himself is said to wander his former home and the cemetery where his bones were finally interred. A European traveller staying in the hotel room that was once Solomon's bedroom claimed to have been awakened in the night by a strange scraping noise, like rats, he said, and when he opened his eyes, a most singular-looking old gentleman was standing by the window. His face was the colour of parchment, crowned with a mass of white curls, his eyes small and his jaw prominent and lantern-shaped. He wore an old-fashioned coat of dark-coloured velvet and tight knee breeches. He had large buckles on his shoes, and a heavy gold watch chain was fixed to his waistcoat and glinted in the moonlight. Under his arm he carried a brass telescope like those used by ship's captains, and I fancied that before he had woken he had been using the instrument to look out the window. Now, however, his gaze rested squarely on me in a piercing and accusing stare. He was scowling at me as he would if he had come upon an intruder. The traveller reached for his walking cane, and the apparition vanished. Next morning, when he described his nocturnal visitor, it fitted the description old-timers gave of the king of the Hawkesbury. The ghosts of 3 different convicts are also said to haunt the house. One, according to a popular but unlikely story, was Jane Wiseman's lover, whom Solomon caught, tied in chains and dumped in the river. The second is an old lag who was supposed to have been flogged to death at Cobham Hall. And the third, a young convict servant who came to Solomon one day, begging to be allowed to go to Sydney to visit his dying mother. Solomon, the story goes, refused his request, saying there was too much work to do. The young man ran away and tried to swim across the river, which is odd considering Sydney is in the opposite direction, but his leg irons dragged him under. This convict was said to appear regularly at the door of Cobham Hall in ghostly form, searching for his former master and still begging for permission to go to his mother. A witness described him as covered in weed and slime and with tears coursing down his ashen face. His hands were raised and held together like he was praying or begging. There weren't much flesh on him, maybe like he'd been eaten by the fishes, but his leg irons were still on his ankles. I ain't never seen anything so bloody terrifying in all me life. And that is a bit astonishing because when ghosts, most of the time ghosts appear to you, they don't have ankles or feet. Sometimes they don't have legs even from the knees down. Just like they forget to fill in themselves when they appear as a, manifestations. Quite frightening. I had that when I had Sir James Douglas appear beside my bed. I could see through him, but I could see, the colours of his clothing, and his hair, and his features. But when I looked down, he had no ankles or feet. And that's when I realised, apart from the fact that he was transparent, when I finally realised that I was actually looking at the ghost of a man standing beside my bed. And I kind of began to freak out a bit, but I thought, no, just stay calm, Tanya. Just stay calm. And so I just looked away from him and had my laptop on my bed because I was in bed early. I had a bit of a fever. So I thought it was a hallucination as well at first. And I thought, this is just some kind of fever hallucination. When I look back, he'll be gone. So I fumbled with my laptop And I looked back and he was still standing there looking at me as to say, "What are you doing, woman? I'm standing here trying to get your attention and you're ignoring me." So I kind of had the presence of mind to say, "Who are you?" And like in ticker tape banner across my forehead and sort of looking up, rolled my eyes up looking up. It was weird. It was a really weird thing. He just wrote Black Douglas. So I had to Google who Black Douglas actually was, and yes, I got quite a shock when I found out who Black Douglas was, the compatriot of, Robert the Bruce, the King of Scotland. So, yes, very odd. But that was in October 2018. And I never did find out if he's an actual ancestor because he was alive in the 1200s. So my ancestry doesn't go, I haven't been able to research that far back yet, but perhaps he's an ancestor or perhaps he was connected to someone. But whatever it was, he was very protective of me, very protective, which I was grateful for because at that time in the casino I was under quite a few psychic and physical, not so much physical violent attacks, but there was a lot of negativity around still in 2018. And so anyway, things didn't look too kosher. I would just say, "Are you there, Sir Douglas?" And I'd get this wave of energy beside me to let me know, yes, he was there. And honestly, it's amazing, really. I very rarely ask for spirit protection because I just don't want to bother them with trivialities. I've got to manage my own life. But by the gods, if I'm in real danger and I call upon them, they come to my aid, for which I am eternally grateful. I think it's a hangover from a layover from that suicide attempt in 2015 when I was under so much vicious attack all that year and couldn't take it anymore. It's almost like the gods or my angels or the Holy One said, "That's enough now. From now on we protect you every step of the way." And by and large they have done so. Can't always protect me from the emotional stuff and games that people play, but it's actually a bit humbling and astonishing how protected I am. But however, it didn't stop that creepy woman a few Fridays ago from just being sexually weird with me. It was awful it was. But anyway, I'm convinced that was a setup too. There's no accidents in the universe. She was having a perfectly normal conversation with me for about 40 minutes prior and then just turned. Odd. Very, very odd. But anyway. Fortunately, I document everything so I know I'm not crazy and just carry on living my best life. And yes, if I see that creature ever again, I'll be invoking my spirit people and look out if I do, people of Earth. Right. One or both of the other convicts have been heard slowly dragging their leg irons and chains across the yard, into the house and up the stairs. An eerie clanking sound that is all the more frightening because it has no visible source. In the spring of 1961, Jane's ghost was blamed for a farcical sequence of events while the hotel was being renovated. An old wall was deliberately knocked down and at the moment it fell, thunder boomed overhead and another wall collapsed spontaneously. An embankment close by gave way, allowing 5,000 gallons, 22 cubic metres, of water to rush like a tsunami through the ground floor of the hotel, smashing furniture and making what the appalled owner at the time called a horrid mess. In 1967, a well-known psychic and her assistants spent a night in the hotel with photographic and sound recording equipment. At around midnight, the temperature in the kitchen plummeted, and a black cloud, like smoke but not smoke, enveloped half the room, obscuring everything it covered. Photographs taken then reveal a dark haziness over the affected area. The expressway, now linking Sydney and Newcastle, takes a different route from the old Great Northern Road. There's not much traffic through Wiseman's Ferry any longer, but it is a popular spot for campers and visitors to nearby national parks. There is a cable-operated vehicular ferry where Solomon's Ferry ran, and Cobham Hall, under its Wiseman's Ferry Hall guise, is still there, much altered, but intact. To this day, if you ask staff about the ghosts, they will tell you stories of doors mysteriously opening and closing. Just last week, of strange noises heard the week before, of items moved by unseen hands, and of the shadowy figure seen not long ago. Whoever the restless spirits are that haunt Wiseman's Ferry, they don't seem to show any inclination to depart. Right, so I'm kind of just going 2 chapters each day. I've got time. I don't have to leave till 1ish, but I'm thirsty and a bit tired and wrung out today emotionally, so I'll just pace myself, people of Earth, day by day by day by day, and continuously live my best life and hope for the best possible outcome for me. As I said earlier, there's great change afoot, and it's like standing in the middle of a maelstrom. And I've been through this. It's not my first rodeo. I've been through this before, and the only thing to do when standing in the middle of a maelstrom, people of Earth, is sit pretty and wait. So, but yes, big changes. I actually need to make big changes in my life. I need to fully embrace life and be adventurous. I went to meet my beautiful friend Margaret yesterday. I couldn't find where the busway was for the north side. We had to go to the information office and to find out, which made me look pretty stupid since I've lived in the city for 36 and a half years. I can't navigate myself around, am I right? A woman who wants to travel to all the sacred sites all across the world can't navigate around her own city after 36 and a half years. That's ridiculous and embarrassing. So I've been in a kind of a lockdown for decades. It's probably why when we had the COVID lockdowns, it didn't faze me at all. What else is new? Trapped in my own hellscape. So yes, I need to start venturing out more, especially while we've still got the 50-cent fares should get on the ferry and take buses and trains and just travel around the outer parts of Brisbane, Ipswich and wherever. Go as far afield as I can afford to go and come back. Explore, might open up a whole new paradigm in my psyche to invite, good, kind, loving people that want to be in my company and want to go places with me and proud and happy to be with me. There is that too. So, but in the meantime, I'll just wait. Anyway, Goddess bless. It's now 11:25 a.m. Have a beautiful morning, afternoon, evening, night. Get the sunshine in your hair and live and laugh and be joyous and let all the negativity go and invite beauty and peace and creativity and passion and true love into your lives. That's what I need to do. I need to trust in myself again, trust in my angels. The right person will see me and love me, no matter what, no matter who, no matter where, in the right time, in the right place, for the right reasons, and be a good and kind and noble and honouring and loving partner to me. And we'll be surrounded by our beautiful friends who love us too. That's my manifestation, people of Earth, but it could happen one day. Anyway, take good care, be of good cheer. Bye for now.